Hi, welcome to part 2 of how to paint better skies, and yes, I'm getting into some demonstrations. So I've actually taken my palette and I've put it upright on my easel, which just about fits, and I've got a 40 by 40 centimetre canvas just beside it. This is going to be all about edges, and I've actually done a Painting with Freedom video parts 1 and 2 about edges, but it's not in the context of skies. So this time we're just going to concentrate on the edges, but also translucency, and that comes in with the edges as well. How light bounces around skies is very important. If we look back, my friend Alex Duncan, who sent me this photograph of his painting, we can also see that there's a lack of translucency. He says his clouds are like concrete, and you can't see through concrete. It's pure grey, and there's no bouncing of the light through there. It comes in a little bit with the lively greys, but we'll get into that in the greys and whites video later on. But let's just concentrate on edges, and we'll just show you how to create and how to build up soft to hard edges. You want to be thinking soft edges first and hard edges later. It's easier to harden a soft edge than it is to soften a hard edge. There's a couple of different ways of creating a soft edge. Mostly you would use wet and wet. That really mixes what you're putting on top of another wet layer. So you're painting wet paint on top of wet paint, and they kind of mix together a little bit. So we need to look at a couple of things. Number one, how not to mix them too much. How not to get out of control when oil painting. All beginners with oil painting go out of control. And it comes with the wet and wet technique, painting wet paint on top of wet paint, and they mix too much. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Just to explain the palette, I will describe the colours that I have on here. Now, I'm not suggesting that these are the colours that you should use. It's not even the colours that I use all the time. Some of these are staple diet kind of colours. Other colours, it just depends on the painting that I'm working on. And this is where step by step really falls short of what you should really be thinking about, because each painting is different. And there's no formula to painting, or at least creative, forward-thinking painting. There's no formula, so there's only little techniques that you can adapt. Okay, let's explain the colours. I've got some translucent cyan up at the top. I've got some King's Blue Deep. I've got some Phthalo Blue. I've got two different magentas here. I have one that's more transparent and one that's more opaque. Slightly more opaque, it's kind of more translucent. I've got cadmium red, this base, which doesn't have any at the moment, but that's for cadmium orange. There's a little bit more cadmium red there for some reason. There's no cadmium yellow here at the moment, but that's where I would put my cadmium yellow. This one here is Indian yellow. This one is yellow from, I think it's Windsor yellow, I think it's called. Yeah, it's Windsor yellow. It's a good for a primary yellow, and it's pretty much one of the only Winsor Newton paints I use. We've got Bright Green Lake, Michael Harding's Bright Green Lake, very transparent. We've got Phthalo Green. We've got Zinc White. We've got a little bit of yellow here for some reason, and then we've got Titanium White. All of these are artist colours. Over here in the corner, can you see it? Possibly not. Yeah, just about. Over here in the corner, we've got a little bit of quinacridone rose, which is a transparent cyan kind of colour. Cyan, but a transparent magenta colour. Medium that I've got here, there's a fair bit of pure gum turpentine in it, because we're at the early stage of a painting, but it's got safflower oil there, and it's got a little bit of beeswax for the matte consistency that I want. So let's get started. Okay, the wee demo that I've got here for you is going to show how I build up my edges, and also the translucency. So to get the translucency, what we want to do is is get the whole painting, or the whole sky area working at once. There's a little bit of dirt on the brush, but I'm not too worried about that. So my brush isn't quite clean, but it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because we're not going to go too saturated anyway at the start. So much more medium than I actually need. We are just going to be concentrating on the sky, which is going to be the top 2/3 really, upwards of there. But we're going to streak the sky colours right down into the land. Okay, so I'm actually going to apply some light to the canvas, a very light kind of yellow, and I'm going to apply it with a paper towel. And this is just going to suggest light, and it's going to kill the white of the canvas. Just apply it with a brush as well to get a little bit more. Now the properties of Indian yellow are quite interesting. There's also another paint that I use, which I could show you. There's also another paint that I use called Old Holland Gold Lake. And Old Holland Gold Lake behaves in a similar sort of way, but slightly more orange. And I think we'll actually use some of that as well. So I'll put a little bit of that down. You'll notice that my colours run through the spectrum from cyan, through blues, through purples, through magentas, reds, and right through the spectrum. So the Gold Lake would come round about the oranges there. So let's just see how that works as well. So it's a little bit more orange, but the property of both these paints, when really thin, they go really yellow. And they work quite well to transition from one to the other. So you can rub them in really translucent. And if you have, generally with oil paint we work thin to thick. So when you're working wet and wet, you don't get too muddy too soon. Because what happens with wet and wet is your brush is going to start to pick up on the layers underneath. So if that paint is too thick, you'll get yourself in a terrible mess. So what I like to do is think about complements. So the complement of yellow being blue, yes, the complement of yellow is blue according to our truth colour wheel, and you can find out about that in my video, The Truth About the Colour Wheel. So we're actually going to mix up a blue. So we're going to use some of the magenta, and we're going to add phthalocyanine, which is a cyan, and we'll get a little bit more of that. So I've mixed a blue that is going to be a complement to the yellow. You can get one of these colour wheels on my website. So really we're wanting to use this as a complement, but we want to get much more into the desaturated versions of that. Because what I'm going to do here is show you the mixing wet and wet of two complements, then creating grey. So I'm going to get a less harsh white than titanium, which is zinc white. And I've still got a little bit of yellow on that brush there, but I'm not too bothered because I want it to desaturate this blue. And it's going to create this kind of greyed out blue. So we can actually add this in and think about this as being the sky behind cloud, which I'm going to create some kind of cloud shape here. Now what happens is that the blue starts becoming more and more neutralized by the yellow the more the paint leaves the brush and picks up more of the yellow that's on the canvas. And much of what you do on the canvas is painted at the beginning anyway, with a brush that isn't that loaded. So I'm just going to have cloud coming in here.